Good morning and welcome to the new episode of Dr. Lamba's Awakening Call. It was February 4th, just about a month and a half back, that China and Russia announced a new strategic partnership and they described it as a no limit partnership. For the first time in the history of the world has such a strategic partnership taken place. No limits can have a lot of meanings. Normally, it should lead to an integration of the two countries because the laws would be the same, the borders would practically be eradicated. And they also mentioned there will be no forbidden areas for their cooperation. So, if the forbidden areas are not there, that means the internal affairs of each other are of mutual interest. Now, is that possible? Because each country is very concerned with its sovereignty. And this agreement, signed just a few days before Russian invasion of Ukraine, sent shivers down the spine of the Western leaders. The dragon and the bear combining, the dragon emitted the fire, and the bear had suffocating. So the so-called self-assumed democracies started trembling in their feet. What's going to happen? But if you look at it clearly, it no agreement ever, you may call it whatever you want, between two sovereign countries can be without limits. There would always be limits. So though it caused tension in the West, but the recent talks between President Xi and Biden show that it may not be what it's supposed to be. In every agreement, there are certain underlying hypotheses which are not mentioned. As a matter of fact, with this agreement, China and Russia wanted to show clearly to the world that they share a geopolitical affinity in opposing what they see a US led Western hegemony. And this hegemony, this combination of the West under leadership of USA is hostile to their interests. Both China and Russia share a conviction, or shall I say, a perception at least, that USA was a power in terminal decline, and that's undoubtedly true because it's divided internally, domestically, and its profile has been shrinking abroad. People don't take USA the way they used to take it in the heydays of USA control. So since the public profile, the external profile is shrinking, and internally it is riven, divided. The events of January 6, 2021, when the US Capitol was witnessing the pro Trump demonstration, and then subsequent chaotic, stupidly planned withdrawal of the American forces from Afghanistan in August, convinced both Beijing and Moscow that the correlation of forces among the major powers has changed. And now the inclination, the geopolitical level has inclined in their favor. So it presented them an opportunity to expand their own geopolitical profile without much risk of a strong blowback. Now this was a tightrope walk. Immediately Biden warned Xi of sanctions if it helps Russia. So what did Biden want to say? The Biden wanted to say that look here, we have set up a quad and our diplomatic response would be not only to impose sanctions, but we will also tactically mend fences further with India. There was also a perception, and very true, that Europe was a divided house, weakened by Brexit, slowing economy, lack of or conflict of political consensus among members of the Union, and then the exit of strong and respected Angela Merkel suggested that the new and the left-leaning coalition under mild chancellor would be unable to marshal United Europe. It's already leftist, semi-leftist. So they have a more ideological commitment to Russia and China than they had to the free trade countries like USA. And since the United Europe response to the aggressive Chinese Russian posture in Europe would not be there. So these assumptions provide the backdrop of the Ukrainian crisis. It's knocking down of these assumptions one by one that the crisis unfolded. Now, Russia and China find themselves confronting an increasing hostile geopolitical environment and possible serious economic damage. But let me say caveat here. The damage is not only to Russia or China or whatever other countries, but it's also to the West. So that's why the sanctions are not fully implementable. No, nobody can deny that Russia is a resource-rich country and it has strong military and substantial nuclear force. But its economy is declining. Its population is shrinking. But China is the world's second largest economy, the largest trading nation of the world, and the number one trade partner for a number of countries. And the economy of China is dependent with its connectivity globally. Its economy is more densely interconnected, as a matter of than Russia is. So both the countries are vulnerable. Nevertheless, the vulnerability of China is more than that of Russia. Because China, if the trading stops, China's whole economy is likely to collapse. So did China agree to the announcement of the no limit partnership without foreknowing its intention to launch a war against Ukraine? But then even if China was not warned, it did not hesitate in siding with Russia. And it cannot escape the charge of complicity and guilt by association. But that way, that can be said of India as well. And that association, that guilt completed one, is not valid. China may have expected, like Russia, that faced with a massive military assault, Ukraine would quickly surrender, but it did not. US and NATO have faulted. They dare not risk an armed confrontation. If they do so, the result will be a thermonuclear war. And that will be committing harakiri. So while the sanctions were expected, they were lopsided because Europe's need for Russian oil, gas, strategic minerals like titanium, compelled them not to enforce the sanctions fully. Now, this proved to be a serious miscalculation. So war could not be brought to a swift end. Yes, Western weaponry, arms have sustained Ukrainian resistance, and the sanctions imposed on Russia are unprecedented, but as I said, it has not helped. The USA has led the way in imposing sanctions on the financial and currency markets. So this is a warning to China, because China doesn't have a alternative financial system based on its currency. So it's therefore vulnerable to secondary sanctions from the West. At the same time, it's a warning to China that look here, if you have an adventurous tendency, which you have, and want to interfere in Taiwan, then you shall be blasted economically. Your trading will come to a stop because the trading of China is not life sustaining the way trading of Russia is. This factor has to be understood. Russia may not be the biggest trading partner, but it's a crucial trading partner. So Chinese rhetoric observed in segments where Chinese interests are closely tied with the Western entity. China's whole trade is mostly in the consumers and the consumer durables. In some countries, it is having technological tie-ups, like in Pakistan, some countries in Africa, but they are not influential countries. Europe, you can get knives and pens and things like that. So it doesn't affect them materially. So China will not follow the West in imposing sanctions on Russia, but it will not violate those sanctions, which could expose China to economic damage. So this lesson for China is very sobering lesson. Any military attack, as I said, in Taiwan could risk serious consequences. Then, later this year, people are forgetting that major event. Communist Party of China is likely to hold its 20th session. Now, at this session, President Xi is likely to extend his tenure by at least another 5 years. It's going to come next to end shortly. So he has to get it extended. And if there is a sanction on China, thereby collapsing the economy of China, it will be a disaster for President Xi personally. There might be dissidents who say, no, you are not very effective, and it's time that you have a change. So he would not like his another term to be jeopardized in any way by the collateral fallout. He doesn't want to be part of the collateral damage. So part of China's diplomatic response is to tactically mend fences with India. Now here is a paradox. India and China both are very friendly to Russia, but they do not also want to annoy West unnecessarily. So in the times of need, the best thing is, okay, you are my enemy, but here we have a common enemy, perceived ones. So let's come to that. So China can tactically mend fences with India, and that's what happened about 10 days back. The Chinese said, look here, we should have talks and things like that. So China has tempered its criticism of Russia, refrained from voting for the UN resolutions, like India. Both countries have abstained. So objective is to demonstrate that, look here, we are like India. We are two superpowers of Asia. And you call India democracy and you call me a dictatorship, but we are together on this. So, we two major powers have taken a position parallel to each other, and if you isolate Russia, it would not serve the cause of peace. Then don't forget, India is participating in the forthcoming BRICS summit and convening the another side summit on the sidelines. In the BRICS summit, there will be another summit, that of Russia, India, and China. Now, that summit would give China optically a degree of the diplomatic comfort. And that would be in the shape of, I am telling you today, as a strategy that's going to happen. A return to status quo ante as it was before Chinese launched aggression at the Indo-China border, along with the renewed commitment to maintain peace and tranquility. Now, this should be the minimal price for a favorable Indian response. And let me tell you, if China says, okay, we go back to status quo ante, LOC where it was, what it was, and we promise we'll maintain peace and we'll have diplomatic relations, India would not say no, we continue to obey the water. And that being so, it would further enhance the capability of Russia in facing West. So these actions being taken, the no limit term automatically has no significance. At the most, it's a rhetorical one, telling, look here, we are together. Our ideologies, our common systems, our methods are the same. We may differ in many things, and we do differ. But that does not mean in any way that we are not together. Our ties are fraternal, brotherly, not friendly only, but brotherly. And as such, we are with each other. So this no limit assumes many things. There are many constraints: economy, trade, geopolitical situation, trading, relationship with India. And when India's relationship is mended, its relationship with Pakistan also undergoes a dramatic change. So all that is likely to be the limiting factor, the constraint in the so-called no limit pact.